Hi, everyone. This is Dawn with the Valley Air District. We'll get started in a minute or two. I see as we still have some people coming in, so just give them a couple more minutes. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias a todos. Vamos a empezar en un par de minutos mientras algunas personas más se conectan. Gracias.
If you saw the chat right now, if it went through, but I just put whoever is in the room in the chat. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bianca. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Looks like one or two more people are still joining, so let's give another more minute. Hi, John.
Hi.
Zong, do you happen to have that email link that has where people have put the trees? Is there an updated one?
I can definitely drop it in the chat right now. Give me a second.
Is it on an email? Or is it?
It was in the presentations, the previous presentations. I can't remember. I thought I had dropped it in an email. If I didn't, it was definitely in the previous vegetative barrier presentations because it's still the same link. But let me go ahead and drop it in the chat right now too.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. As people come into the room, we'll go ahead and just let them join in at that point. Welcome to the Shafter Vegetative Barrier Subcommittee meeting. This is meeting number 3. My name is Song, and I'm with the Valley Air District. And just wanted to welcome everyone. Before we get started, I did want to go ahead and share the screen so that our translation team can also share information about switching to the English and Spanish interpretation mode. Let me just share my screen. Can everyone see that okay? Perfect.
Thank you. Buenos días a todos. El día de hoy tenemos el servicio de interpretación disponible para aquellos que se estén conectando desde una computadora. En la parte de abajo del menú de Zoom van a ver el icono de un mundo que parece un mundo. Seleccionan ese icono y luego seleccionan español y silenciar el audio original. Y si se están conectando desde un dispositivo móvil o desde una tableta, pueden tocar su pantalla, seleccionan los 3 puntos, luego interpretación de idiomas. Seleccionan español y silenciar el audio original. Y para finalizar su opción, pueden seleccionar finalizado, terminado o listo. And for those who are monolingual English speakers, we have interpretation available for you today. If you're using a computer, you'll see at the bottom of the Zoom menu a world icon. You can select it and then select English, so you can hear the interpretation from Spanish into English. And if you're joining from a tablet or your mobile, you can tap your screen, select the 3 dots, and then a language interpretation, and then English. And at the end, you can select finish or done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. Why don't we go ahead and get started? Let me go ahead and keep sharing my screen. And this is the agenda for today's meeting. Can you still see the screen? Perfect. So today's meeting will start at 4, which we went ahead and got started, and it's scheduled to end at 5:30 today. We'll go ahead and start with quick introductions. We've got a couple people from the district here on this Zoom meeting, and then we'll jump into the update for the vegetative barriers measure. Besides myself, we've got Stephanie Ng, and then Kat, and I think I see C. We're all part of the district, as well as Mari, who is recording the Spanish. And from here, I'll go ahead and give it to Stephanie, who will go ahead and start the I will share the presentation, but she'll go ahead and kick off the presentation itself. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Song, and good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Stephanie Ng, and I'm a Senior Air Quality Specialist in our Community Strategies and Resources Department, which oversees the implementation of AB 617. And today, Kat and I will be presenting this update for vegetative barriers in Shafter. And just to kind of, I think, frame and provide context for folks, I think we have been working with the subcommittee and with the CSC on this measure for several meetings, and we so appreciate and hear all of the feedback that you have been providing us. And so today we really want to take the opportunity, based on the last meeting, we heard there were some questions and folks wanted an opportunity to be able to get clarification on kind of what has been going on with the measure. So today we'll be providing an update on this process and kind of how it's going and where we're moving in the future. And we will, once this presentation is over, we'll definitely leave lots of space for folks to provide any comments that they might have, and then also any questions. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started with the presentation. First, we just wanted to give some context about kind of, again, where this measure started from. Originally, this measure, I think as most folks in this call know, this measure was developed originally with the goal to find partners to work with. It originally didn't have any funding associated with it, and we were going to look for partners who were interested in taking advantage of it that would, provide funding for it. In February of 2020, overall, your SERP that you all put together was approved by CARB, which included our vegetative barriers measure. And then kind of, I think as time went on and in working with the CSC did vote to reallocate $1 million in funds to this measure. And then in January of 2023, our district governing board did approve this funding reallocation. And pretty soon after that, in the same month and year, we opened what's called a request for proposal. We'll call it an RFP. Essentially what that is for us to put out this RFP to look for entities or organizations that can implement this program. Next slide, please. And I think just to talk really high level about really some of the important funding kind of processes that need to happen for this measure and for this project to take place. One is that we would like to select a local eligible entity, of course, to be able to plant these vegetative barriers. I think most folks on this call know, we as an air district, we have experience in a lot of programs. Tree planting is not one of them. And so again, we'll use this RFP to find a really experienced and someone who will be efficient in implementing this program in the community, again, through this RFP process. And this is required to ensure that our air district and the CSC has the ability to be able to evaluate organizations and kind of the proposals that they're putting forward to be able to plant vegetative barriers effectively and kind of with taking in and based on community feedback. Next slide, please. And this slide is just some examples of vegetative barriers. The first two pictures that you see starting on the left there were actually provided by Gustavo Sr., so thank you for sharing those. That last picture on the right there is an example of a vegetative barrier from the EPA's guidance on vegetative barrier projects. Next slide. And then to get into a little bit more detail about what a vegetative barrier project might look like in Shafter, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Kat.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be going over some key items that we have been working on with the CSC for the Vegetative Barriers Project in Shafter. As Stephanie had mentioned, we have shifted fundings to the Vegetative Barriers projects based on CSC feedback. The allocation in the CERP to support this project is $1 million. The type of eligible plants for vegetative barriers include trees, bushes, shrubs, or a mix of any of these plants. While the RFP has a requirement for species selection, there are some considerations that we can look into, such as the type of species and their locations. For this project, some of the key benefits to planting vegetative barriers include a reduction in exposure to emissions and in downwind pollutant concentrations. The CSC has identified two main areas, with the first one along the fields surrounding the La Colonia neighborhoods, and the second area along Highway 43 and Laurel Highway, which we will expand on in the next slide. One of the questions that came up is whether more than one location for a vegetative barriers project is possible, and the answer is yes. We can plant in more than one location, and we'll work with the selected entity and the CSC to determine the final location. The following slide has a map showing CSC support for Vegetative Barriers Project, which is based on all of the feedbacks that we received from the CSC over several meetings and discussions. The circled areas on the map are the high-level priority areas, or the top suggested areas that we received. The circled areas on the bottom is along the field surrounding the La Colonia neighborhood. The second area at the top is along Highway 43 and Laurel Highway. As previously mentioned, we can have more than one location for Vegetative Barriers Project. As an incentive program, CERP funds will be provided to a selected entity to install the vegetative barriers. So when the entities apply, we can guide them to the map where the CSC is interested in having these vegetative barriers planted. As mentioned, the final location will be determined in conjunction with the CSC's input and the entity that is selected through the process. As we move forward, we'll continue to have more discussions with the CSC and as well as take feedback. The tool for the map, as previously shown, will continue to be available to everyone. The next slide is an overview of the next steps of the process. As you know, the district opened the RFP in January of this year. While the first deadline has already passed, we have extended it to April 10th, so there is still time for interested entities to apply. With any proposals that do come in, there is a review and selection period that will take up to approximately 90 days. Our team will help review the application to ensure that we have all of the necessary documentations and information. During this time, we will also be working with the CSC and the entity to address the locations of the vegetative barriers, which is important to the community. Once the selected entity and the district executes an agreement, we can then begin to implement the project by planting trees and other plants. So at this time, I'll go ahead and pass back to Stephanie, who is going to wrap up the presentation for us.
I see a hand from Bianca. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I just see the timeline. Is there specific dates that the district is trying to see when everything's going to be completed, or is just a timeline of how it should be working, the process should be working?
So this timeline is that the 90-day time frame is once the RFP period closes. If we do get an application that comes in, it does take approximately 90 days for us to review the application and see if everything's all complete, and then work with the CSC on any additional information.
Yeah, and maybe to provide a little more, to kind of add on to what Kat is saying. So that fourth step, district to review application and look for CSC support. I think as many of you know, this measure is something that we're doing also in some of our other communities like Fresno and Stockton. And we are a little further along in the process. And from those, we have learned that it's really important for our district team to really look through the documents and ensure that, you know, the applications are complete, because we of course don't want to move forward with anything that's missing any documents, that's not meeting our requirements that we worked on kind of as a CSC CSC to put together. So that step is what Kat's saying could take up to 90 days to kind of go through that review process. So some of it, I don't think we can put exact timelines on it because I think some of it will depend on what comes into us. But generally about a 90-day kind of review process. And then I think generally that process for selecting kind of the contract, of course, we'll bring it back to the CSC and subcommittee to discuss as well. But I think generally we're looking for that second step about 90 days. And then for some of these other ones, I think it's a little harder for us to put exact timelines on. But Kat, I'm wondering, do we have like maybe like a general quarter estimate that we can say?
Well, is this, Bianca, is the question in reference to just the review period, or were you also referring to the contract period, which would take some time to have the selected applicant to review the contract to make sure that everything looks good on their end, and then we can fully execute the contract. So there will be some additional time in addition to the review period.
Thanks, Kat. Bianca, does that answer your question? Okay, awesome. I'm seeing in the chat a yes. Are there any other questions about this kind of general timeline? Awesome. I just want to I'll wrap up this presentation and then we're just going to open it generally to lots of questions from everyone in this meeting. So I'll go ahead and move to the next slide. So again, just kind of high level, I think we really just our main goal is just to make sure that the CSC is kind of appraised and they are aware of this process that we're going through. Again, we've heard lots of really great feedback from this group, and we just wanted to kind of keep the CSC and the subcommittee aware of what the district is kind of working on the back end to make sure these projects are moving forward. Some of the last maybe like high level points that we wanted to just let folks know of just to wrap up is, of course, these suggested sites that you all are recommending. Zong at one point, and I don't know, Zong, if you want to drop it in the chat once more. We have that social pinpoint map, of course, that lots of folks already added suggestions. It is still open. Feel free to pop some suggestions in if you do have other ones. But these sites are, of course, intended to guide the applicant and then also guide our outreach process. As a general reminder, this is the case for kind of all of our SERP incentive measures. This incentive funding is available to encourage that these barriers be installed. Like generally all of our other SERP incentive measures that are available to businesses, participation in this process is voluntary. And so that's what that funding is there for, to incentivize folks to take advantage of it. And finally, of course, we want to make sure that the final vegetative barrier locations that we're working kind of in coordination with, of course, the Air District, the CSC, and the entity that gets selected by the RFP process, again, to kind of determine those final locations. And with that, I'm happy to open it to any comments or questions from the group. I'm happy to take them either verbally or if folks just want to pop something into the chat.
Bianca, I know you've got quite a few residents with you. Did any of the residents, if you have any questions?
Maybe as folks are getting their questions together, I do see Gustavo Sr.
Yeah, just a question, clarifying question. I think on the last monthly meeting, you shared, I believe, the similar map of the area, and I think some comments made in the last meeting were that I think some of those areas are within the city, inside the city, and I don't know if and I think Jessica said that you were going to review the map because I'm not sure if that actually reflect the areas that residents want to see the green barriers, you know, and I'm assuming you have more specific locations, but just a comment on the map.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, and I think that's the area, you know, And I think one of the questions was this information collected for the greening project, not the vegetative barriers, but the greening throughout the city, and if that information was like mixed up with both different projects.
This is Stephanie. Maybe I'll start and then I'll Zong, feel free to jump in. This map is specifically meant for vegetative barriers. Although we did hear maybe some feedback or questions of like maybe someone did get a little bit, mixed up, but the intention of this map is vegetative barriers. Go ahead, Zong.
No, I was just going to correct Stephanie, as this map itself was created with intention to get feedback and to help the CSC members provide ideas as well as suggestions on vegetative barrier locations. But there is possible that there were some confusion when we created this map, that maybe the drops that were included were meant for urban grading, but all the comments in here in general are from all CSC members. So you can always, click on the different dots and see where, or trees, and see where the discussions or where that comment or suggestion came from. I'm not sure, Gustavo, your hand is still raised. Did you have anything in addition, or was that the?
No, I think moving forward, those things will be clarified, but mainly on where the name of the chapter, I think where the Lerdo Highway and Highway 43 intersect, that area, I think some of those areas are like within the city, like by 43, at least one of the dots there is, I think it's in the housing, in the residential areas. So not sure how that may work.
Yeah. Yeah, we can definitely follow up on these as well. And I think ultimately, like, this is definitely a recommendation. We would hope that, as the organization or entity that's taking on this project, as they dig into these locations, I'm sure if it's, maybe it's the case if it is that it's located on someone's like front yard, obviously that's not, they'll still be vetting of these locations as well. These are just suggestions from the CSC that we want to take into account to look into. But of course, we'll still kind of come back to the CSC and work with you all on kind of final locations once an entity is selected.
Okay.
This is John Gwynn, and I apologize. I don't see a hand to raise on my screen, and it's probably just me not being very good to run Zoom. But then the wonderful company is going to submit an application, so we know the timeline is fairly short, and I think our application probably affects most of the properties we own. But one of the concerns is just the timing. Will be, into April. Harvest is going to be in August sometime. To have any sort of time to get something planted and growing and helping this year, I would hope the district we might figure out a way to do this a little bit faster, if it's at all possible.
Thanks for that suggestion, John. We definitely appreciate that. And I know I hear a lot of eagerness from the CSC also to kind of get these projects going. And we definitely hear that from you and from the CSC. And we just want to make sure also, I guess, in our process that we're doing our due diligence and making sure.
I know, absolutely.
Yeah, we totally hear that though. We want to get trees planted and vegetative barriers up as soon as we can in the community. So
have you made a decision on whether or not oleanders are acceptable?
I think generally on our team, that's something that we can look into once applications are submitted. That's something that we can work with applicants on.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks. And I want to make sure I see Linda, your hand, but I also saw maybe a few, like a minute ago, Annabelle's hand raised too. So I want to make sure I'm respecting kind of the order that I saw them. Annabelle, maybe you don't have a question anymore. We can come back to you.
No, she lowered her hand out.
Thank you for confirming, Bianca. Go right ahead, Linda.
I just had a few things because I've noticed we've had a few meetings on the placement of these trees and it doesn't look like things are getting corrected. So it was mentioned just now that some of these have been done by CSC members, but as you can, I just want to point out one, there's a tree at Mantle Park and it's Shafter High School. And if you actually click on it, it was Dora Hernandez that made the comment, but it's for around the colony. And there's a few of those that are placed within the city of Shafter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they need to be removed.
Okay.
So there isn't any confusion.
I see that the one at
so that one is a concern. I don't know if now is the time to open up the discussion on some of the placement. Like, for example, there's one that's at Sequoia Elementary at the corner of Fresno and Mantle. Is that one meant to get Sequoia? Because that corner right there actually doesn't, I feel like, get a lot of the dust. I would be more concerned over some of the areas on Laredo Highway and 43. Because that particular corner, I just felt like it was an odd corner to put a vegetative barrier, unless it's not even prevailing wind to protect the school. So I was wondering when we would all discuss that. And then there's some other ones that are placed within the town that it says per Dora, Orange Avenue. And I know that Dora was actually trying to get a lot of them put by the colony. So I just was hoping that the Air Board could kind of clean these up because it's a little confusing for folks. The other question I had is on the RFP, are we going to be able to view it at all? I know with the urban greening, no one's been able to really apply because they have to upfront the money. And then they also have to, I think it's like a 7 or 10 year commitment on the trees. And I just don't want to see that happen with this RFP. I think it's really important that we get these vegetative barriers. So I'm hoping that we've learned from the mistake of our other RFP and to make it a little bit more user friendly for folks to apply and get the trees planted. And I also do think it's important to get this moving as soon as possible because we're going to have harvest starting again, basically late July, August, which is what this is for. And if we can move this process along any faster, it would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, thanks. I heard a couple of things. I heard also, and just generally, thank you, Zong. I was going to say, so the RFP is available. That's something that Zong just shared in the chat. I do know that generally I hear the eagerness to get the program started, and we feel that too. It is about to close, and I think, and we have heard interest, I think already from one group, but interest in folks applying to this RFP. We will plan, it closes right on as our Shafter meeting starts. It'll close 5 p.m. on Monday. And so we'll plan to do a quick update about generally, we won't dive into that, people will presumably just have submitted it, but we'll at least be able to update the CSC if there were applicants to that program as well during our next CSC meeting on Monday. So that's, I think, one thing. I want to also get back to the kind of the points raised about the map. I did hear a couple of them, and I don't see Dora at this meeting. And I'm wondering, maybe we can have, I heard a couple of spots from Linda, maybe Zong, we can have, if you don't mind following up with Dora, just to really clarify, maybe if it's the case that we do really want it at that spot, that's one thing. And of course, we want to take into the consideration of, CSC members, but if maybe there was confusion between vegetative barriers and urban greening, we can just clarify if there was that confusion.
If you click on the little tree, it will actually have her comments and it doesn't match up.
Around the colony, I see that. Yep.
So it says, like, if you push the little tree that's at Mantle, like that doesn't work with where it is. I'm a little confused at the one at 43 and Central in the middle of town. I don't really know what that is blocking. And then I'm a little confused on this one north of Laredo on Mantle, because I don't know what that would be blocking either. It's an open lot. There's another one off of East Euclid in Orange, and it says per Dora Orange Avenue. So I think it's Pitt and Popular Avenue. So that's obviously, that tree is in the wrong area. I'm assuming this one where it says school right on Lerdo at Richland Primary, I'm assuming that's Golden Oak. So is that going to be something feasible? I'm assuming this has to do with the traffic that goes up and down Lerdo to protect the kids. So if that's the case, you know, if we had a barrier, I know that obviously the eucalyptus would not be, or not eucalyptus, whatever that stuff is, that's not good. I think that's a great idea to have that there. But some of the other ones, I'm just a little confused. And then the comments, I'm assuming, are from I think the trees just got put in the wrong spot via her. So there's another one at State. Oh, that one I agree with. State and Beach. There's I think it's cherries there, and the residents on State have told me about pesticide smell and then also spray onto their cars. So I think that's a very important one. But I just hope that we could kind of get some of these trees cleaned up that have comments that actually are for the colony.
Sounds good. Our team will look through that, and then if it's physically like it says colony, we will check with like whoever made the comment and clarify where they actually meant in like near the colony.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. And maybe I think just to follow up with the group and make sure we're not like, you know, we're following the thread on this, maybe we can try and get as many of these changes done. And then during our next meeting, we can drop that link into the chat and folks can kind of take a look and see if there's any other spots that are clearly maybe in the wrong spot. Go ahead, Gustavo Sr.
Yeah, I think Sequoia School have at least orchards in 2 sites. I think that's needed. It will be worth, because I think in front of the school there is one orchard, and to one of the sites is another orchard. There is only community garden between the school and the orchard, but I think there is a need for the barrier there.
Thanks, Gustavo. And you're speaking about the point right here next to Sequoia Elementary that our map is on?
Yeah, on the
Okay.
Sequoia Elementary.
Okay.
So Gustavo, with that point, do you mean to have it, because that is, it looks like there's kind of a house there and like do you mean to have it further back so that it protects more of the students from the prevailing wind? Because if we have it right there on that corner, like I understand what you mean behind, because there's the school and then there's a community garden that's to the north. So are you saying to have it past the community garden at that orchard so it blocks anything coming in from the northern, or the winds from the northwest?
Yeah, I think one is just in front of the school in the corner. There is I believe it's, I don't know if it's pistachios or almonds, and the other one is the one that you said is after the community garden. And just to give you an idea, you know, the community garden is supposed to be, you know, organic, non-pesticides, and at least in a couple of the occasions, garden members are being asked to move out because they are applying pesticides to the neighbor orchard. So, and I think that will protect not only the students, the school, but also the community garden that, you know, residents of Charter are trying to grow, you know, healthy food.
Thank you both. Do we have any, I see a couple of folks in here that I haven't heard from. Are any other questions that, that you all may have about the proposals, about some of these locations?
Is it possible you could put the map in the chat? We want to add some locations there. We're having a conversation internally, but we were wondering if we could add more trees or Thank you.
Yes, it is definitely still open. It will be open, could continue to be open. So feel free to continue adding to this map. Any other folks with questions? I'm not seeing any.
I'm sorry. I think to John's comment, I think he mentioned that, Wonderful is prepping a proposal. And and understanding, that you open the window for applications, but looks like there are not a lot of applicants for that. So let's say that Wonderful submit their proposal one day after you close it. They will still be able to work with the district, right?
I think generally we would be open to working with folks that are interested in this program. We understand, the program, it's not the easiest for smaller organizations to take advantage of, just the way that the programs are set up. And so we do want to work with folks that are interested. And maybe I'll just share generally, like in our process, like for example, how it's been in Fresno and Stockton. It's not just that we'll like pick an organization to work with and, the CSC never gets to like work on this program, of course, through the process, we'll still continue. It's happened in Stockton, it's happened in Fresno. As we kind of review the applications that come through, we want to make sure we're still working with the group, bringing back information about kind of how the proposals are meeting the requirements we put forward, kind of, and still working with the applicant. So there's still, I think, plenty of opportunities to have feedback. We want to make sure this is kind of an open and transparent process for sure. Any other questions? I think also maybe I'll just mention, I think Linda might have mentioned the RFP for urban greening as well. So maybe we'll just drop the link into the chat. And maybe I'll just look to my team, Kat, C, or specifically the grants team, to see if there's anything that they'd like to clarify in the locations, anything that they'd like to clarify with the subcommittee.
This is Catherine. I don't have any further updates, but we do have our RFP currently open, and we do look forward to receiving the applications so that we can work with both the entity and the CSC on that.
Perfect. And so maybe I'll just kind of say a couple of our district next steps. Like one we heard from definitely loud and clear from the group. We're going to look through the map and just check with all the locations to make sure that they are in fact like describing where they are placed. Anything that's like in the colony, we'll follow up on. And then we'll plan to kind of just let folks know of those updates, and then folks can kind of go through and just make sure that the locations are also making sense with them as well. We will plan to during Monday's meeting, provide an update on the application or the RFPs closing. And yeah, well, those are kind of the next steps that I see my team. I'm looking to you. Are there any other things that we'll follow up on?
Well, just one quick thing. As part of the update on Monday, we'd love to get a volunteer from the subcommittee here who is in attendance and is planning to be at Monday's meeting. If you'd like to also provide a quick summary and your feedback also during that meeting, that would be awesome. If there's anyone who'd like to go ahead and drop your name or raise your hand, and that way we can definitely also kind of include you, make sure we include you in our presentation when we give it on Monday.
Awesome. Any interested folks? Not seeing any immediate volunteers. Maybe we can plan to follow up with a couple folks or send out an email just to see if we can solicit a volunteer, just to share out with what happened in this meeting to the bigger group during our CSC meeting. All right, with that, I don't see any other questions, but I think our Air District team, we scheduled this meeting until 5:30 and we're happy to kind of hold the space if folks continue to have questions. It sounds like Bianca and the group that you're with is maybe adding things. So we're happy to stick around and answer any questions and work with you all as you're potentially adding locations. Like we can stick around for any last questions, but I'll go ahead and wrap up this meeting and thank you all for coming. We'll look forward to seeing you all next Monday for our regular CSC meeting. And with that, we hope you have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. And yeah, I think our team will stick on if anyone has any other questions that you might have. And it could be just AB 617 related. But maybe I'll go ahead and stop the recording now.